What's up, world? You are now in tune to another edition of Marvelous Talk Marvelous with your main man, Damon.
What's happening? What's happening?
Sean, what's up?
What's happening? What's going on?
And of course, myself, Ahmad, man. You are watching All Things Marvel, man. We're talking about all things Marvel. And guess what's bigger in the biggest thing in the Marvel universe right now? You guessed it. WandaVision. And definitely we're going to get into it. We're going to get it cracking. Now, I will tell you guys, there's some spoiler alerts here. So if you haven't watched it, I would stop this video, go back to the episode, watch it, and kind of get caught up because we're going to be talking about a lot. And there'll be a lot of good information to digest in this segment. But look, we're going to jump right into it. And we're definitely just going to recap the episode that we just saw. And guys, it was a lot. It was a lot. Dave, why don't you just go and hit us off, man? Tell us about what we saw in this last episode.
Man, you could almost do a dissertation on this episode because they gave us so much. So the show starts off, and this is basically, in some ways, a flashback, kind of catching up to where we've been progression-wise in the show, but giving us some things that on the back end we didn't see that was happening outside of Wanda's vision. So what's going on at the very beginning of the show, they show Monica Rambeau's character, who we know was inside of this reality. They show her basically coming back from the blip or the snap of Thanos, just showing you more how Thanos jacked up everybody's world. I mean, and so she's there and she comes back we see her in a hospital, and we find out she goes into this hospital and all these people are coming back. I mean, it's just like, it's really crazy. You see people's flesh coming back out of the dust, and she's she's trying to find out where her mother is. You remember her mother is Maria Rambeau from Captain Marvel, who was Captain Marvel's best friend. So that's Monica's mother. So she's looking for her because I guess we find out she was in the hospital. Well, she finds the doctor, I guess that was her mother's physician, and she says, the doctor's surprised. She's like, where have you been? And she's like, where's my mom? And she's like, your mom died. She's like, no. This operation was fine. And she goes, no, baby, your mother died 2 years ago. And you've been gone for like 3 years. And so, once again, the reality setting in of what Thanos did. So that's how we start off. Then the next scene puts us at the Sword headquarters. So we see Sword, which is like kind of an offshoot of what S.H.I.E.L.D. was, but now more focused on, all type of sentient life. They give you the full name of Sword and what it's dedicated for doing, in this reality, in this world that we're in now. So you get S.H.I.E.L.D., now you have Sword. So we find out that Maria Rambeau was actually a founding member of Sword. And so her mother set all this up, and she goes back to work. This is like maybe a few weeks after the snap, after she's come back. And so we find out that the acting director guy, who I think we gotta keep our eyes on that dude. I sense some nastiness about him. Could be an undercover scroll. That's just my take when I look at it. But anyway, we'll get into that another episode. But anyway, he tells her that she's grounded, that she can't do any assignments out in space, because apparently that's what she was doing. She's actually a captain, so she followed in her mother's footsteps, I assume, of going into the military. So she has experience, working in extraterrestrial stuff. And so he says, you're grounded. It's just Earth missions only. And she's like, why? What's going on? And this was because her mother had requested that if she came back, she wanted her just focused on dealing with stuff on the Earth. So anyway, they send her to work with the FBI because apparently there's been some missing people situation going on in New Jersey. Monica heads out to New Jersey to none other than Westview, which we know is the city and the place where Wanda is doing her stuff. Okay, so she goes, she meets with Agent Wu, who you guys remember was from Ant-Man, the comedic dude from Ant-Man. So she goes and meets up with him. He kind of gives us some background, and there's some sheriffs there, and the sheriffs basically tell her, well, there's no such thing as a West View. In fact, we're from East View. so Monica goes and gets a drone, sends the drone into this town to try to figure out what's going on, and the drone just disappears. Now, mind you, the drone looks exactly like the helicopter, the toy helicopter that Wanda pulled out in episode 2 that was still in color, but everything else was black and white. That drone is almost the exact design and everything, except it's more modern. Whereas the helicopter looked old school, like when it went into Wanda's reality. So the drone disappears, like it goes into this thing, and then Monica, she goes closer into the town, and her hand goes into what's like almost like an energy field, and she literally gets sucked into this whatever town, whatever, but you don't see her anymore. So they bring in the full force of Sword. They bring in, I mean, every aspect of Sword. And this one where we get introduced to Darcy, the character that was in the Thor movies. Okay. And so Darcy, she's going on, she's like a doctor, you know, in astrophysics. She's, you know, she's big time now. And so she starts taking out her equipment, and she tells them that they found, I think it was CMBRs, a specific type of energy that she discovered what's going on. And she uses her equipment to basically bring into focus what would be a TV image. So she's like, go get me an old TV, not the flat kind. Get me a old school television set. And so all of the people are there, and she's tuning into what's actually happening. And so they send in this guy. He goes into the sewer thinking, well, maybe I can get into the town through the sewer. Interesting thing with that dude, that was the beekeeper guy. And he gets his normal radiation suit that we would normally see in the 21st century. When he crosses that barrier, that energy barrier where Wanda is, it turns into a beekeeper suit, because I guess that's the 1960s version of what that radiation suit would be like when she crosses over. And so basically we kind of begin to see, and then they're the main thing they're trying to figure out is what happened to Monica Rambeau. They're trying to figure out what happened to her. And so Darcy starts seeing her in these episodes that's going on inside of Westview. And so goes to show that basically we get to the part where we all remember at the end of episode 3 where she gets expelled. But we see it the way it actually happened, man. And Wanda literally went full Scarlet Witch mode, pulled out the red energy. And I mean, she made it very clear to Monica that you are an intruder. And we literally see her. I mean, she expelled her. Homegirl went through houses. She was flying. And but the interesting thing about it was that Wanda, when she looked at Vision, when he came back and asked what happened, we saw the dead Vision, not the Vision that we had been seeing in the TV show. We see the after Infinity War without a head. You can see a big old hole still in his head, his eyes glazed over, and she kind of shook herself and saw him the way she wanted to see him. So that part was really interesting too. It's almost like, is Wanda doing her own version of Weekend at Bernie's, walking around with the dead body? So anyway, that's pretty much kind of a summation of what happened in the show, is that now that we have Sword on the scene, they're investigating and they're trying to figure out what's going on. So it was a lot of a background information on what was going on behind the scenes. And now it's almost like we have a foundation moving forward of where we know what's happening with Wanda. So Sean, what's up with what's your take on where we at now, bro?
Well, to go over what Damon talked about, definitely is all true. And keep in mind, I want for those viewers and people that are watching our show to understand that Kevin Feige is building a brand new world past the end game. This is all brand new synopsis. We're getting introduced to all kind of new characters, but characters and situations that in many ways run parallel to the last several movies in the first 3 phases of the MCU. So you have, like how Dane talked about Sword. Well, Sword was going on at the exact same time Shield was, right? So you're building a world on top of a world. And the neat thing is we get to see the retrospective of what the blip actually looked like for people to come back. We got a little piece of it in Spider-Man where they showed them the band blip in, but in all actuality, we got to see it from a chaotic or horrific standpoint, which ties to WandaVision standpoint, that this is like a horror movie. It's a smaller PG rated of a horror movie. And we see the horrific part of the blip of people coming back in, right? So now we have all these worlds, everything closing off on phase 3, and at the same time, Kevin Feige building phase 4, right? So what's going on is that we are now getting details of the actual points or spins of Wanda. There's been all kind of rumors, all kind of suggestions, all kind of ideas of what's going on with her. But things we know for sure, that Monica is inside of that Wanda and Monica are inside of an energy field. We know that for sure. We do know for sure that the town of Westfield does not exist, or Westview does not exist. We do know that there's an Eastview, and we do know now that there's a Westview. We do have an idea that there's a missing persons, right? Because that's how Jimmy Woo's character ties into the plot. He's an FBI agent. And an interesting fact to point out is that Jimmy Woo's character, from an FBI agent standpoint, only dealt with missing persons or people that was in the witness protection program that was tied directly to the Sokovia Accords. He's done it for Ant-Man. He's done it from Hawkeye. Now we're seeing, okay, here's this other new mystery character that he has direct involvement in. And I have a theory about that, but I'll bring it up later on. So by the end, we see that we're now in our reality and our timeline and our sphere, and we see that it's being projected back into what Wanda was, or what the TV world was, right? So we have this contrast that's going on what's real and what's not. Even to the point of, with the spoilers or the ideas, they had to create their own whiteboard. And this goes back to what I was saying with Kevin Feige being a genius. Kevin Feige and the Marvel Studios filmed this stuff over a year ago. They knew that we would have questions like, what's the hexagon shape? Is Vision really alive? Is this the same thing? What's going on? So they built that whole sleight of hand ideology or magic or witchcraft or whatever you want to call it into the show. They built it so then that way you would not be able to pinpoint exactly what's going on or who's behind all of it, which I think is a very interesting factor. And it builds and expands the ability to have another universe, right? So as the show goes on and goes on to progress, the last thing that happens once Monica's character gets propelled out of whatever this force field or timeline or multiverse or quantum realm, when she's propelled out of it, she says, and it's the last lines of the show, it's Wanda. It's all Wanda. Yep. But it has our mind thinking as viewers, is this actually what's going on? Or can we trust and believe what we actually see? So the big picture is that we're now getting an expansion of the world, or the new, or phase 4 MCU. We're seeing it from 2 casts or 2 points or 2 viewpoints. And that's what I believe is going on, fellas. Ma, what do you think about it?
So here's the thing. I think we need to kind of step back. And this is what I love about Marvel is you get a whole bunch of these great little Easter eggs, and it makes everything really, really, really easy to follow. If you don't know, just like Sean Big G said earlier, you got to know he's building the world. Now, he's using parts of the things that we've seen in Marvel movies to do that work, right? Yep. If you think back to Captain Marvel, this is where Monica Rambeau came from. Monica's not an arbitrary character or somebody that is brand new. She's been in the Marvel universe and we've seen her before, right? But she was just a young girl. And you got to think back when the snap happened, if you think back to Spider-Man and everybody came back and they came back to their original place that they actually left from, right? So it wasn't one of those things where they were snapped back into a new place or a new realm. They went back to the place that they actually left from. So she left from a place where her mother was dying of cancer, right? So, but her mother in Captain Marvel, after the end of Captain Marvel, started this whole place called SWORD, this whole organization, right? So now we're seeing all of these things come into play. Then we're flashing back, like what Dame said with the helicopters. You got to think about, there's a couple of things that, a couple of lines of thinking about the helicopters. And this was said by the character that they brought in, another character they brought in from another movie, Thor. What was her name again?
Darcy.
Darcy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So they with Darcy, they said, oh, well, where's the helicopters? And they were like, look at them. That's different from the drones that we sent in. It's like, yeah, it's kind of like a retro, or maybe it was to keep the drones from seeing anything, right? So that was a statement that was made, and it just wasn't like something
That's
that
true.
was wasted, right? So we can look at it two ways. One, everything adapted to the time that it was in, or B, Wanda just didn't want nobody seeing nothing.
Or
Correct.
both.
If you notice,
both. It could be both.
Go ahead.
It could be both.
It could be both, right? And notice every time something went wrong, she would auto-correct that thing. So she would auto-correct. Another thing that I think that we should pay close attention to is exactly what Big G said as far as this whiteboard is concerned, right? It's answering fan questions, of course, like why the hexagonal shape, why the sitcoms, is this the same time and space? Now, an interesting thing got put up, and Big G had pointed this out earlier, is that so now we know that the FBI agent actually knows about time travel because he's asking, is it the same time and space? Why would he ask that question if he didn't know about what had happened as far as time travel is concerned? Now, the other thing I thought was really neat here is is Vision alive? Because I think we all wonder that. I think we all have been wondering, is Vision alive at all? And then if you go down a little bit deeper, and I won't get into the right one until at the very end here, if you see the failed attempts at phone lines, digital, and I don't know what, I'm trying to see what that last one is down there, drone. Okay, so you're talking about the drones, right? So those failed attempts at trying to communicate to what's going on inside of Eastview, Westview, there's no communication there. So in my mind, as he's building this world, he's also answering questions so that you can easily follow. And I want our general public to know that you as you're following these episodes, you're actually following a new world like you did in our flashback to our first episode of Marvelous, where we were talking about Iron Man and how Iron Man built the whole world for the first phase that we went through. So you guys, one of the things that I want to elaborate on now is a lot of the Easter eggs. There's so many things that I think that were in this episode that if you blinked your eyes, you just probably missed. Dane, talk to us about a couple of those.
Real quick, I want to circle back. Just a small point that I was was thinking about when you brought up about Agent Wu and his maybe apparent knowledge of space and time. Who was he following when we first met him? He was following Ant-Man, right?
Yeah.
Who was the character who, if it would not have been for him coming back from the quantum realm, we wouldn't have knew anything about them being able to go. So the question is this cat still keeping tabs on Scott Lang?
Right.
Just throwing that out there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's a good question.
Right.
And then keep on. What other Easter eggs?
So the other Easter egg that comes to mind to me is there's this point in the show where on the board where they showed all of the people's driver's license and identities, and they did this was not by accident. Every one of those people had another name. Okay, so they're the name they had on the show. They had an actual license that was the real person's name. So are these people dead? Are they alive? Are they agents? Who are they? They did not really clarify who they were. They just said played by so and so. That's all we knew. But there's one specific person that did not have an identification card, and it was Agnes. Agnes had no ID. It was just her name. That's not by accident. They didn't go out of their way to show us every last one of them characters besides WandaVision. They didn't need no ID because we know who they were. But everybody else had an ID. Agnes did. That's not by accident.
Right. There's two Easter eggs that I want to point out before I get into the whole thought process of what's actually going on with WandaVision. Two Easter eggs that I really want to point out is the point in the show where they walk through the Sword space station or Sword station. During that point, you see a collaboration of Easter eggs from a bunch of different Marvel movies. You actually see them building what looks like a version of a space jet of a Queen jet, which is something that the Avengers traveled in all throughout. And even the Hulk traveled in a Queen jet in Thor Ragnarok to, or Quinjet in Thor Ragnarok to the other location that he had outside of the Rainbow Bridge, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then you also have a callback to the actual points or parts of the ship that was shown in Infinity War, where excuse me, I'm sorry, where War Machine was sitting and talking to an AI version of General Ross, and you saw the big technological ability for them to be able to apply that and to fly off into space, right? Mm-hmm. So why would they, like I said, Kevin Feige wastes nothing. So why would they make that a point of emphasis to show her walk all the way through Sword, and you see the backdrop of what they're possibly doing? The other Easter egg that I want to point out too is that they made emphasis on the word sword, right? The word sword doesn't match the word sword in the comic book. The word in the comic book is not sentient world observation. That's not what sword is. Sword in the comic book is more or less time travel, going through the quantum realm. Now they're talking about it has to do with AI, weapons, observation, and then also recognizance, so that means they take it in and they do something with it. They manipulate it and they start to use it. So what type of role does sword play in it? And the Easter egg that I keep finding myself tied to is that just like as well as we know, Hydra infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. So did Hydra infiltrate Sword? Is Sword really behind this? That's the question or the Easter egg or the point that I just kept getting drawn back to outside of the bigger picture of the show.
And Sean, get this. I think, like I said, man, and I heard somebody say it could be a case because if they're sentient, and we know that, and they did this in the MCU where they kind of made the Skrulls. There's some good Skrulls, but there's also some bad Skrulls. Yes. So maybe this is a way that through this organization they're gonna bring in the Skrulls. You know what I'm saying? Because we know that we're gonna have a Secret Invasion TV show, which may leak into the movies as well. So, like I said, I think that director, man, I think he's a Skrull in hiding. I just have a feeling. I don't know why, but I just don't trust him, man.
Right. There's definitely something shady going on with the interim director of the agency of Sword. There's something real shady going on with him, and we can't figure it out. You know, I don't know if it's sleight of hand or what type of role he plays, but he definitely lets on to even the point where he questions them about how long ago did Rambo go? What did she take? Okay, and he gathers up all this information, and then the next thing you know, he's walking away. If you're a leader and a director, you don't move out of the way when the trouble hits. You're trying to organize, get as much as you can, find out what you got to find out. And Jimmy Woo took on more of that role than this guy being the actual director of Sword. So my question is, who are you reporting to? Are you leaving out? Are you going to go report to somebody? Are you going to go tell? You know, that's my whole thought process, that there's something going on with this guy that we just can't figure out.
Absolutely. And it leads me to my next point, is that even though Monica Rambeau was like, it's Wanda, it's all Wanda, I can't imagine that. I believe it's 50% Wanda. I believe at this point, Wanda has, you know, you think about what she's went through. She has lost Pietro. Well, first of all, let's go back. She lost her family in the Stark missile, right? Mm-hmm. After that, only person she had was her brother, Pietro.
Lost him.
She lost him in fighting Ultron. Then, you know, she lost Vision. So the only family that she knows, she's lost. So let's not just, you know, just paint as, you know, she's just going crazy for no reason. Because, I mean, hey, that's a lot of traumatic events to happen.
Yeah. PTSD all day and night.
She got extreme PTSD.
Yeah, so, you know, it's a lot of traumatic events that happen to Wanda Maximoff. Now, let's just put our thinking caps on here, people. If Wanda's creating a world that, you know, her and her family can live in, a perfect world, which, you know, grew up watching sitcoms, so the perfect world would be the sitcoms. I mean, if it was us, it would have been the Cosby Show. You know,
right?
You know, it would have been a different world. We would have been in those environments, right? Or Martin, you know, the Fresh Prince. We'd have been
Jefferson. Go back, Jefferson.
You know what I'm saying? So the gist of the matter is that she's building a world. Now, if she's there, we also know that there's somebody else there who they have not identified, because they said, Jimmy Woo said, and I quote, "This is a missing person case. Let's start there." Now, they started putting pictures up on the board, but if you notice, there was never any missing person that was put there.
Correct.
And they referred to the missing person as a him.
Correct.
So if you keep seeing these, like we said, Kevin Feige wastes nothing. Kevin Feige is not going to waste anything. So even conversation is key for you to listen to. And they speed by these things, and you're like, wait, what did he say? You know, and you have to pay attention. You definitely have to pay attention. So I believe that Wanda, and I'll pose this to you guys, I believe that Wanda's 50% here, and there's somebody else going on. There's somebody else in the background. Who is this missing witness? What is that all about? And we had a leakage, and with somebody leaked. I don't know who, what not. You know what I'm saying? some things. So let's get into that as well. So Dame, who would you think first and foremost is helping this thing along?
Well, we circled back on this from last week, and we keep going back to Ralph. Ralph is the linchpin that we think, many of us, I think most of us in Marvelous world, I think we lean into Ralph being Mephisto, just because of what we know of Mephisto's his tactics, the way he works. He's clearly in allegiance, in alliance. Ralph is Agnes's husband. Okay, we know that. Some of the stuff that Sean mentioned last week about, you know, how Agatha Harkness, who is her comic name, how she came out of the Salem witch hunt and made that deal with Mephisto to have a new lease on life. So I really think that Mephisto is a big part of this somehow or another. I don't know how they're going to do it, or even if they're going to do it, but we've just seen so many signs that lead to him and his influence, and we've seen how he works. You know, his influence in the comic on how the twins were born. You know, so it's just so many things that smell and look like it could be Mephisto, but once again, we don't know what direction they go in. What you think about it, Sean?
Well, I agree with Dame until I went back and I did a little research and I started snooping around and reading old comic books and watching different things online. And I think I've almost put it together, but I'm not quite sure, not 100%. I believe that the missing persons, Ralph, is a character known as the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper is huge as far as Monica and Vision and Wanda and Mephisto and even Agatha. They're all tied together throughout the comic book realm of the Marvel Universe. And the Grim Reaper is a person that has the ability to bring people back from the dead. So, and he's also Simon Williams. And if you don't know who Simon Williams is, he's Wonder Man's brother. So he's this multi-layered, multi-dimensional character that they bring into the Marvel Universe. The reason why I say that it's the Grim Reaper is because we've seen a brooch that Agatha has wore, and I believe that's the Grim Reaper that's inside the brooch with two other characters standing beside it. We also had the screenshot in the second Marvel Vision where Vision faded through the floor, and there was the Grim Reaper helmet. So I think that the missing persons is the Grim Reaper. And how I tie him in is that I believe that the Grim Reaper has something to do with this enchantment, because I believe that Wanda is under a spell. So I believe he has something to do with this enchantment or this world that they've created, and that Agatha and the Grim Reaper and Mephisto are all tied in together. And then in many ways, Mephisto might be the puppet master for Agatha, but the Grim Reaper is tied on and he had his own motivation. So I was thinking that Grim Reaper is also tied to Sword. He's also tied to Hydra. And he's also tied to this group called AIM. AIM's symbol is a hexagon.
Hexagon. So
why do we keep having these hexagons show up? References in the commercials to AIM, to Hydra, and to the sinisterness of Wanda's background. That's not by accident. So the conspiracy or the thought process or my viewpoint of what I believe WandaVision is that Wanda's under some type of spell or influence to have the world that she's creating be moved out on a bigger spectrum, almost like rebuilding the world in Hydra's image. You know, that's where I think we're going. But inside of that, Mephisto having his own idea or own vantage point to come into our reality. What do y'all think about that, fellas?
So I think that's a good point. And
very good point.
My question is, you guys, we know that he was cast. We've known that he was cast for a long time. The character that played Speed on the Fox side,
Quicksilver.
Quicksilver, excuse me. I'm sorry. On the Fox side, he was cast on, and we don't know who he was cast to play, but we know he was cast and Marvel had signed him. So, following you guys' theory, we know there was a leak, and we saw him in the leak. So, who do you think this guy is?
Well, once again, I think that's Ralph. I think that's the character Ralph that you're going to see. And I think that he's the Grim Reaper. He's inside of the cast. He's one of the players that's manipulating the hexagon. For lack of better words, almost like an enchantment that's going on. And he's one of the people that's in charge of the hexagon to fulfill Wanda's dreams, but also, for lack of better words, to cut a deal with the devil. I think that she's cut a deal in order to get what she wants, her own reality, but at the same time, the Grim Reaper is getting what he wants. And in order for that to happen, I think that Monica, and I think that Wanda, found Agatha, and that's where that spell was enchanted. But if you go back to the episode and you listen to what Jimmy Woo said about the missing persons character, not only do they not know where he is, that people don't even remember who he
Who he
is.
is.
So how could he do that? How is that a part of it? I.e., goes back to the whole comic book aspect of the Grim Reaper. Him working alongside with Agatha and with Mephisto to have this action or this world created for Wanda. Makes sense?
Interesting, bro. Interesting. I'm on the fence of him once again because we know that some reality stuff is going to happen. I'm going to go back and what I had said originally. We're skipping decades. Every show we're skipping decades. Could he be either another version of Quicksilver from another alternate reality, or is he going to be one of her kids grown up? That one I'm not really sure about now. But I'm thinking he could be Ralph, but he could be Mephisto Ralph. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know where they're going. I'm curious to see how long they have Evan Peters as the actor. I'm curious to know how long he's supposed to be signed on to do these Marvel shows. I'm just curious because that'll tell us a whole lot. So that might be something we want to look into because if we see him around for a while, then we might kind of get it. But Sean, I'm really liking that Grim Reaper theory, man. That's a good one. That's a really good one. It makes a lot of sense.
Well, I'm thinking that it's got to hold up. Like I said, I think that holds a lot of water, right? I think it holds a lot of water for this reason, you guys. You think about it. If Wanda was totally in control of Vision, why is it that Vision has different outlooks on things? And every time that Vision happens to snap out of whatever's going on, he's like, something is wrong. If it was Wanda's mind, he would never think anything.
Right.
It would always be compliant to Wanda's mind. So there's something else going on with Vision. There's something like the question said, is Vision alive?
Yeah.
The reason why I believe that it's the Grim Reaper is because his power is to bring people back from the dead, right? So now there must be some part of Vision still there, right? And if it's some part, and with the little spoiler we saw, with the little teaser we saw, Vision actually gets outside of the bubble. Why would he want to go outside of the bubble? Why is Vision trying to figure out what's going on? Something is different about Vision, and he's not totally being controlled by Wanda. So if he's not totally being controlled by Wanda, who is controlling Vision? Now, you think about everybody being dead, and in the actual Westview, Eastview, that would be another reason why the Grim Reaper is pivotal in this whole situation. But I have not in my mind, because Dame, you said something. You were like, if that's an older version of one of the kids, how could it be? Because both of those kids were in that scene. So both kids were side by side. And then, the scene, we won't tell you what happened. You find it. But in that scene, definitely both kids were there with the actor, Quicksilver. So my theory is that he either has to be Mephisto or he has to be the Grim Reaper. And, then we don't waste conversation. We've already said that Kevin Feige wastes nothing. The snide comment he made lets me know that he's not really a good person. Because why would you make that snide comment? Hurting, grieving woman. You just if you know that information, right? Because he obviously knows the information because he said it. But if you know that information, why would you say it to a hurting, grieving woman? And then why would you say it to somebody who's that powerful?
Right.
You're gonna get flashback unless you got powers too.
Right.
True. And the thing that I hope they don't do, man, I hope they're not pulling on a chain with the Quicksilver dude. He's just making a cameo. I would be hurt if they just do that to us. I hope it's bigger than that. But
I hope it's bigger than that.
I'm gonna go back to something you said, Ahmad, in our first episode. When she sang that lullaby, I think she unraveled reality back to, it's like things was set back. That's why, I mean, man, when you brought that up last week, I'm still chewing off of that, because that's when Monica came back to herself and made the Ultron statement, and all of that that's why she saw Vision with the hole in his head, because at that moment, her reality was not right. She was back to what really was, and so, but once again, whatever that force was that's pulling it all, she saw Vision in the fake, stuff that he, with the Mind Stone back and everything. But I think that lullaby, man, and when she sang that, it was like she literally was going back to the way things were. I mean, she even shed a tear. So, like I said, I think that opened up her to be vulnerable at that point. She was vulnerable, which is the reason why Mama Bear came out and she got rid of Monica. But yeah, man,
and absolutely. And the other thing, Dane, is that remember Vision said we can go anywhere we want.
Right.
We won't. And she said, no, we can't.
No, this is our home.
So yes. So there's some elements of Vision being his own independent person, and then there's elements of her controlling what we see. So I don't know. I mean, at this point, it's really getting good, and it's really getting to a place to where you have to pay attention to everything that you're seeing moving forward. Now, our last take here is, we want to always, we talked about where we are, we talked about what we've seen, but we want to kind of lead into where we're going. We're hearing some news about, there being a big reveal in episode 9, and definitely my thought process on that is one that I think, some people are going to be like, it's outlandish, but hey, I'm gonna go ahead and put it out there. And then, I would like for you guys to respond as well. I think if we're going to a place to where Wanda is the antagonist or the villain, right, we have to say in our minds, okay, who is it and how is it that we can bring her back, or we can deal with her for a short period of time, because that's all we need is a short period of time to disrupt everything and grab everybody we need, right? We can't, you understand that you can't take one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel universe out. It's just not gonna happen. You can't take them out, right? We already seen what she did to Thanos. She almost, had Thanos not got petty and said, I'll just kill everybody, and she took him out.
Yeah, for sure.
Rain fire!
Quickly, don't stop.
Thanos didn't care about anybody at that moment except himself. He got real petty. It was what it was,
Like somebody we know, but I ain't gonna say nothing.
So the gist of the matter is that if we're going to reveal a character who can stand up and snap out of reality, it's just one or two people for me, right? It either has to be Reed Richards, or it has to be who is from the Fantastic Four, Mr. Fantastic, or it has to be something that my brother will kind of expound on later, and that's Charles Xavier. Either or. What you think, Dane?
Well, I got one that I'm gonna throw at y'all. I believe, so we had an interview with Paul Bettany not too long ago that went up on Marvel Entertainment, and he talked about working with an individual that he had been wanting to work with for a long time, but he never got to work with him. Now, if you think about it, Wanda Maximoff is going to be a pivotal character in the next Doctor Strange movie. And he said, well, Doctor Strange and Vision, they both Avengers. When we saw them on screen, they weren't working together. Think about it. Doctor Strange was on Titan fighting with the Guardians of the Galaxy, Iron Man. They were fighting Thanos there, but Vision was on a table in Wakanda. So technically, Paul Bettany and Cumberbatch weren't in the same, they didn't have to show up to work together even though it's the same world, they're fellow Englishmen is another thing. So, and Cumberbatch is a big dude. That's a big actor that's done so many things across so many different genres of movies. But in actuality, he is the one person that's going to have to try some kind of way to clean up the mess that Wanda is creating. And notice one of the things that they said, that the place that they had the potential to fill the entire earth. So I'm just saying this reality and we know that his movie is called Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So I think that we're going to see Doctor Strange come in episode 9, try to fix what's going on, but he's not going to be able to. It's going to be so big that it's going to take us into his movie. So that's just my prediction on what I think. I think Doctor Strange is the one that's going to be able to deal, because that's Sorcerer Supreme, man. I mean, we talking about spells and other stuff going on. Who better to deal with these things than Stephen Strange?
Yeah.
Big G, what's up?
Well, I like both of you guys' ideas. There's definitely, the one thing about the Marvel movies is they give everybody an opportunity to come up with their own idea even before it hits. And it basically is tied to the depth of what you believe a character's tied to, or how you're going to try to tie all the movies and everything together. So I really like both of them. Like I said, I'm a old school comic book head. So, I always revert my ideas back to what took place in the comic book. And then based on the research and reviews that I do, tied to the internet, because I subscribe to a lot of other different people that do sort of the same thing we do. And one of the things that I found out a while back, almost a year ago, is that Kevin Feige is going to introduce multiple characters in multiple layers through multiple television shows and movies, right? And the one big thing that I heard is that you're going to get a young Avenger, or more than one young Avenger. And for those that don't know the Young Avengers, there's so much information out there on them and how they tie to this show. It's unbelievable. That's who Wiccan and Speed are. That's who Billy and Tommy are. Billy and Tommy are Wiccan and Speed, Young Avengers. So do your research. And if not, we'll do a breakdown for you at a later time with the show. But I also was told that there's going to be a mutant tied to everything in Phase 4. There's going to be a mutant character. And that's why Feige at the Marvel Expo didn't introduce the X-Men. He kept saying mutants because he wanted to bring them in a character at a time. So I believe that the big reveal of the mutant is going to be either Professor Charles Xavier, who's going to be tied to SWORD in some capacity. They're going to know who Professor Xavier is. They're going to call him in to help try to reel Wanda in. And then I also believe that it possibly could be, and it's a character that has been rumored and known to have already signed a contract with Marvel, Keanu Reeves. For y'all that don't know, Keanu Reeves is the star of the Matrix movies. So Kevin Feige is not going to bring a character that big into the Marvel universe until he can land him a spot that'll carry him all the way from now to probably the next 10 or 15 years. So I looked at it and looked at, okay, what character could they bring in? What could they bring into this universe to make it tie all together? And the theory or the plot was Magneto. For you guys that don't know, Magneto is Wanda Maximoff and Pietro Maximoff's father in the comic books. He's the person that shows how the mutant gene is tied directly to Wanda and tied directly through Pietro. So why would he not bring a top mutant character into this universe or into this world and give us all something to graft onto as we move through Phase 4? What's that sound like?
Hey, that's deep, bro. I mean, I would definitely love to see it, because now that we got a glimpse of knowing that the X-Men are going to be brought back into the MCU, they're gonna be represented right. So if we get a taste of them, and like you saying, bro, if the rumor mill is correct, that we gonna get at least one mutant each upcoming episode or show that's getting ready to be launched, that's massive. So it's a win. Regardless of which one of our theories it is, I'm gonna be salivating like a hungry dog. I'm ready. I'm ready, man. It's gonna be off the chain, whichever direction they go in.
Well, at least we know that we definitely got. I mean, it holds up, right? Because we definitely have the Young Avengers in this movie, right? I mean, and we're in this sitcom. We got Wiccan and we got Speed. The Young Avengers, we have it there, right? So
True.
The theory's holding water. The theory's holding water, and I think it would be great to see, the mutants or the X-Men, actually come into, just like Dame's shirt, actually come into this reality that we know. So definitely moving forward in the next, when we get to the next Marvelous next week, I mean, we're gonna have a whole bunch of great things to talk about. I mean, we've seen some of the previews, the Halloween costumes, all of the things that's moving forward have got us like, wow, have us really, really excited about what's happening. But your parting thoughts, you guys. What do you guys think moving forward in WandaVision?
I think this next episode is going to start really leading us to like the full climax of where we're going in her made up reality. Like this last show was very climactic as far as setting the backdrop and the behind the scenes that we never saw before. That was important that they did that this episode, because it really opened up a lot of why and what, you know what I'm saying? So it gave us a foundation. Now this week we going right back into her world, but I think it's gonna be like what's gonna happen next is gonna be climactic to whoever the enemy, villain, whatever. That's all gonna be pointing the rest of the way for the rest of the episodes coming up. I really believe that this next episode is gonna be a must-watch episode, very much so.
Yeah, I agree with Dame, no doubt. The who, what, when, where, and why of the WandaVision series is laid out in front of our eyes. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 gave us a backdrop that, if you wasn't really a Marvel fan, you was lost. Episode 4 tied us back to what we know as the current Marvel. And I think that moving forward, episodes 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are going to just wrap this thing up in a way that's going to propel us for the next 2 years. Because remember, Kevin Feige is going to push phase 4 down to a 2-year synopsis. So in 2 years, we're going to get the full view of what Kevin Feige has in store for us through the MCU.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, with that, everyone, we want to thank you for joining us for another episode of Marvelous. Listen, we want to hear what you think. You know what I'm saying? We gave you our thoughts. Definitely hit us up on comments below the video that we've just posted, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or whatever method you're watching. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments. And like and subscribe, follow us. You got all the information for each individual group member of the team. So, but follow us, Marvelous Talk, on all of the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, like, subscribe. Man, listen, we're looking forward to many, many awesome episodes with you guys, because we know that the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Marvel in and of itself just keeps expanding and getting better and better. And we're glad that you're along for the ride with us. So until the next episode, man, y'all keep it marvelous. Your boy signing off. Holla at y'all later. One.